Alright, this is going to be Chapter 5, Diversity. And we're going to talk about quite a few topics in this. Pretty much instructors know thyself, diversity in the classroom, power and teaching relationship, opportunities to integrate classroom diversity, instructional materials, instructional strategies, student-educator relations, preparing the students to incorporate diversity awareness into their own practice, developing a culturally sound teaching curriculum, and then instructional strategies. Introduction. Individuals view life through a unique set of perspectives. This is shaped by years of accumulated experiences and interaction with their own world and their own environment. This chapter helps to prepare the educator to improve diversity and to make a culturally aware educational environment. First of all, instructors know thyself. All humans have a susceptibility to biases. And this is pretty much a simple fact. Webster defines bias as an unreasonable judgment. Biases can take many forms. Examples include ethnicities, genders, age, socioeconomic classes, religion, political persuasion, and sexual orientation. Biases become dangerous whenever they are manifested as behaviors. To deal with your own biases and to know yourself requires quite a bit of self-reflection. You need to recognize your own personal biases. An instructor should try to see lessons and other course material to the perception of others. So as you set out a lesson plan and as you set out your course material, take a walk in someone else's shoes for just a second before actually calling it finished. An example to assist with this, or an example of trying to kind of keep an open mind is to have a colleague review the exam and lesson plans for possible cultural biases. Diversity in the classroom. Early attempts at cultural competency kind of failed. Even though the earliest attempts meant well, the truth is that the very act of defining a group characteristics can reinforce the very stereotypes that we're trying to kind of minimize. Students within a classroom may include representatives from a wide variety of groups. And there's a section that goes along whenever you're reading the book, and it says how many ways can you single a group of students, or how many ways can a single group of students be dissimilar whenever you're looking at them. And first, there's tons of things that maybe we haven't even thought of, and all of these would be the thought process into making something diverse. We want to have cultural diversity where we have no biases. It's essentially universal curriculum, if you will. In the military, we used to call it green. There's no race, creed, color, religion, or sexual orientation. Everybody's green. And that refers to the color of their uniform. So everybody is a part of that family. And there should be no biases in play. That list that I was talking about, age, which would be younger versus older, non-traditional students, appearance, their hair length, hygiene, tattoos, piercings, disorders, physical disorders, emotional, psychological, psychiatric disabilities, gender, female, male, bisexual, transgender, generational, baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, learning ability, dyslexia, unprepared, the student that has an unprepared or poor educational background, language ability, English as a second language, the people that use poor grammar, people that use slang primarily to fortify their words or communicate, marital status, cohabitating, divorced, married, single, widowed, political, conservative, liberalism, libertarianism, race, ethnicity. And this is in order from the Census Bureau, starting with A, American Indian, Alaskan Native, Asian, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, Black or African American, Hispanic, Latino, and white. Religion, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Wicca. Sexual orientation, bisexual, heterosexual, homosexual. Socioeconomic, indigent, poor, middle class, wealthy. So whenever you look at that, we have a big melting pot in any classroom, and they can be divided into groups very, very simply. Whenever we deliver our content, excuse the euphemism here, but it should be green. Culturally unbiased. Religion unbiased. Gender, generational, learning ability. All of the above. Just the facts. Power in the teaching relationship. Relationships between the student and instructor can be a powerful one. Power refers to the control the instructor exerts upon the relationship with the student. An example of this, the student doesn't have much control over things. Schedule, test assignments, ... and so on are all generated by the instructor. But the power that the teacher has over the student is more of a mentorship. We can have transformational learning if it's applied right. Very simply, we're not trying to change their religion. We're just trying to change their thought process a little bit. But this can bring about big, gigantic, transformational changes in their thought process. Opportunities to investigate classroom diversity. There are many ways an educator can create an environment that takes advantage of a classroom's diversity rather than to minimize it. Not all approaches work. The instructor should try to approach or develop with their own ideas. They may find these efforts to be surprisingly interesting and effective. An example of that is that if a student from the community is from like the rural area, and what I'm talking about is like, let's say that they're from a farming community. If you gave them an opportunity to speak in the class a little bit or open up a discussion to where they were involved, they could probably speak volumes on farm safety. Understand, not everyone will understand, well, if you get your pant leg caught in a power takeoff, it's probably going to bring about some major trauma. Well, the person that's from the farming community could probably elicit more information about that power takeoff device than anybody from the urban setting. Very simply, they could speak volumes on it. So, given an opportunity, we could encourage and incorporate more education within the actual classroom by utilizing them rather as a resource rather than a hindrance. Instructional materials. We are going to talk about ethnicity and gender, and printed materials and visual aids. Ethnicity and gender. Spoken and written language should be ethnically and racially and gender nonspecific, or used with equal frequency. Most times, ethnicity or gender of patients and written scenarios are not always necessary. When dealing with ethnic-related diseases, their ethnic background may become important, and examples of this are going to be things like sickle cell or Tay-Sachs. Printed material and visual aids. The educator should ensure that models and simulated situations reflect a wide variety of cultural backgrounds. Instructional strategies. We're going to talk about presentation and then overall assessment. Rather than using one type of presentation, the educator should use a variety of teaching strategies. Examples of this are going to be small group exercises, web-based lessons, role-playing, or take-home case studies. Now, we can also combine these as well. Taking a case study, breaking them into small groups, having them talk about the case study, and then a leader from that group give the presentation for that small group. So what was their findings? Were they the same? Have them give about a couple-minute presentation in each one. This builds their ability to communicate within a group, and then mix and match them. Don't keep them in the same groups. Assessment. Instructors must be aware of their own biases when they are evaluating student performance. An example of how to kind of remove yourself from the element of your own bias, because as you're The relationship with a student grows. You can introduce your own biases very easily. Have the students use a code name or a portion of their social security number to where you're unaware of their grading performance. Utilizing a rubric standardizes the way that you would grade. And this would help. This is a way to help remove the biases that you would have on your own students. Student-Educator Relationships. In this section, we're going to talk about awareness, terminology, spotlighting, knowledge, behavior, environment, and acceptance. Pretty much learning is more likely to occur when the instructor creates a safe classroom climate. First of all, awareness. One must recognize that students come from diverse and complex backgrounds. Nothing about them should be assumed. Students must be permitted to explain who and what they are and how they want to be identified. Terminology. The educator must be sensitive to the changes in terminology. Asian Americans may not want to be referred to as Oriental. Hispanic Americans may prefer to be called Chicano or Latino. If it is necessary to categorize, ask which labels are comfortable or preferable. Spotlighting. One must not force a student to be spokesperson for any group. When explaining the higher frequency of alcoholism or diabetes within a particular group, instructors must not single out a member of that group. Students may volunteer first-hand information about their community. This type of contribution is to be encouraged. Knowledge. The instructor should get to know his or her students. Office hours, class downtime, and any other local activities can be used to find out personal background and learning styles. Students should be encouraged to write scenarios for the class that are based on their own personal experiences. This approach helps to validate student lives for the group and shows that the instructor values what is shared. So if you have them write down some scenarios that are based from that, you can kind of get an idea. The more interaction that you all have together, the more that you're going to know about your students, which is a good thing. The better you can adjust your learning style or adjust the overall class dynamic to better fit your students and have a greater outcome. Behavior. One must lead by example. The instructor should exhibit the actions desired in his or her own students, so be the leader. If comments are made about negative stereotypes, the instructor should take time to discuss and counter them. Reach out to people in the community for help if necessary. Typical community leaders are eager to help and share information about their community. Environment. The educator must create a classroom environment that is a safe haven for discussion and exploration. It is important to remember that what is humorous to some may be hurtful to others. Examples of this: even in scenario, you should be unbiased as well. If in a scenario you used he one time, the next scenario should be she. Acceptance. Many elements of everyday behavior are influenced by cultural rules. Some cultures may consider eye contact between an elder and a child to be disrespectful. The instructor who is aware that such cultural disconnects exist can avoid embarrassing and even infuriating moments. Preparing students to incorporate diversity awareness into their practice. I'm going to talk about culture. Pretty much open communication is the essential element of any successful group. Instructors must foster clear dialogue within their learning setting to promote and develop collegial, a good group experience, essentially. Culture. When the word culture is mentioned, images of racially or ethnically biased differences often come to mind. Social scientists define culture as a group of people who share experiences, language, and values that permit them to communicate knowledge not shared by those outside the culture. Instructors must be aware of cultural competency challenges. Transcultural communication can open doors to greater understanding, but it also can lead to misunderstanding. An example of this: EMS is a culture of its own. So most of us go around or can at least follow along a conversation when 10 codes are used, especially if you've been in the business a little while. Code 3 or 10.8, things like this. But to people not in the profession, they're going to look at you very puzzled. This is an example of low cultural competency. You should communicate universally so that your communications are understood. Developing a culturally sound teaching curriculum, a needs assessment, research, and then other resources. You pretty much expect a student to follow specific steps, especially whenever they're learning a skill, something say like airway management. It's equally important to design purposeful strategies to promote their skills related in cultural awareness. And needs assessment. Not all areas of the nation are similar in terms of culture that exists within that region. Incidents of homelessness may be greater in an inner city than a sparsely populated rural area. A needs assessment or an evaluation should be conducted by an EMS instructor for the purpose of ascertaining terms, customs, and other cultural elements that should be introduced to the curriculum. Now, I found a needs assessment not for specific cultural needs of a lesson plan or curriculum, but the needs assessment that I found was essentially this is a business needs assessment for possible introduction of cloud applications. So, very simply, I'm just going to talk through this really quick, but the same thought process and theory should be applied whenever you're looking at your own needs assessment. Now, the questions that were asked here, do the employees have to run applications on different operating systems? Well, yes. Let's say yes. Do the employees have to run incompatible applications simultaneously? Let's say yes. Do the employees have to run small sets of applications on a constant basis? Let's say yes on that one too. Let's give them a no. Do you employ a large virtual mobile workforce? Let's say no on this one. Do your applications require minimal integration with your desktop environment and require low interoperability? Let's see if we can give a no on that one. Does your network have enough bandwidth to address possible latency issues that may result due to application virtualization? Let's give me a yes on that one. So if you come up with 5 to 6, this would be a strong candidate for virtualization applications. 3 to 4, careful consideration, cost advantages of application virtualization. So this guy here got 4. So this would be a risk versus benefit analysis. You can do the same thing. Are there culturally diverse individuals within our community? Yes. And then we could isolate the ones that were culturally diverse. Should I know more about these following individuals? Very simply, it's a needs assessment. What needs does my curriculum, as far as an educator go, require in the populating community that I am currently delivering education to? Research. This can often be the most labor-intensive step of developing a culturally sound curriculum. Research is for the information needed during preparation for the lesson plan that will deliver the concepts. Often information in the EMS textbooks or often the information in traditional EMS textbooks can't be found, or it's inappropriate, or it's not appropriate at all. There's no information there. Other sources of information may include community leaders within the population of interest. Very simply, if you're interested in something, most of the community leaders in that community would be nothing but flattered. If you ask them, I'm having a class over cultural diversities, and I have questions. My class will be the ones in the future that will be responding to you in times of need. Would you like to come talk to them for a little while? I'm betting that most community leaders would be flattered that you come to them and ask them. Other resources. Local service agencies often focus on specific groups within the community and can offer a wealth of information. Other resources like the American Medical Association, the American Association of Medical Colleges, have released compendiums of references too, on the needs and resources of specific populations. Other resources out there can be found. Instructional strategies. We're going to talk about case studies, guest presentation, community outreach, group discussions, practical skills, clinical rotations, identity, role-playing, and communication games. Case studies. Case studies are scenario-based lessons that tell students about an event and the actions taken and the outcomes. The case proceeds and details for the responding crew are found, how they actually treated the patient, and how the patient responded. These types of scenarios may be created to include a wide variety of diverse elements. Guest presentation. If there is a particular community of interest, a member could be invited and present a lecture to the class. This lecture could include a brief history, core beliefs, special information, and this would be like, is eye contact appropriate, touching of female patients, the application of blood products. Students should be encouraged to ask questions, and the presenter must be made to feel welcome, even when his or her beliefs seem strange or extreme. So, some warning: if the students should be briefed in advance of this to be ethnically correct. This is a guest. Community outreach. Students often engage in community-minded projects, such as staffing first aid stations, providing blood pressure checks, giving bicycle safety lectures. Students could help set up a health education booth at a community center in an ethnic minority neighborhood. Students could also set up a free CPR class for low-income and single-parent groups. This would get them out there and actually in the community. Group discussions. An open forum is best supported by clear guidelines and goals. If students in the class identify themselves as members of the community of interest, they should be invited to, not compelled to share. So invite them to share if they feel like it, but they're not required to share. If they would like to, that would be awesome. Practical skills. Ideally, an actor is brought into the skills laboratory for the practical scenario. The actor must be prepared to play his or her role. Care should be taken to create scenarios that inform students and even challenge perceptions. Students from other classes may be used in actor roles depending on their hidden talents. Clinical rotations. Clinically oriented rotations can be supplemented by limited observations in non-traditional settings. If the community of interest includes several intellectually disabled patients, students may be assigned to clinical rotations with a center that specializes in the care of the patients. Such rotations could provide students with expert opinions and a chance to put a face on the disorder, thereby making it more meaningful to them. Identity. Instructors and students make assumptions about others. These assumptions include labels about ethnicity, religion, disabilities, and more. The identity game can be used to stop erroneous assumptions. Some care should be applied and some ground rules with this game. Each student is given a card and a code name. The code name is only known to the instructor. He or she then writes certain things about themselves: heterosexuality, Christianity, male, female. These cards are then shuffled among the students randomly. The student assignment would be to try to find the identity of the classmate. The class would be polled to see how many students were able to identify the author of their card. Some care needs to be applied to that, along with the next technique, which is role-playing. Students are asked to identify a group, ethnic, gender, or religion that is different from their own. After this, they are assigned to play the patient role for that particular group. This exercise has been used in EMS classrooms with great success. However, a tad of caution must be used for these portrayals, for they can be full of stereotypes. Communication games are a way to These are good to increase students' awareness of how well you must communicate. Through games, students can learn the importance of communication and the ways it can be affected. An example, students are taken into the lab and divided into two groups, Group A and Group B, and they play the reverse game. The reverse game in Group A, the students are told to reverse the meaning of the words. They will say more when they mean less. They will say right when they mean left, and so on. Group B in this will be assigned to them as their partners. Create a task where communication is mandatory. So Group A has to communicate with Group B. Events can be humorous, but it demonstrates how communication can be misleading and misunderstood, and counterproductive if given incorrectly. The United States, this is in summary, the United States is referred to as a melting pot. Perhaps a better analogy is that of a stew pot. By supporting and celebrating diversity in EMS classrooms, students can become better prepared to deliver care. These are our future healthcare providers, and they may become more attuned to the diversity of the EMS profession itself. If you have any questions in this subject matter, feel free to give me a call. My name is Roy Smith, smithr@imsa.net, or 405-219-7613. Thank you.